What's up, everybody? I'm recording this on Friday, August 28th. Normally, I take technically the last day of summer here in the U.S., which is Labor Day, which would be next Monday. But we have so many international listeners at this point that it doesn't really make sense to do that. And since this Monday that this episode comes out is August 31st, which is the very last day of August, I felt like, you know what, let me just do it. Let me do it here. So I've taken this week off, and I'm going to be releasing my next episode either on Monday, September 7th or Tuesday, September 8th. So it'll be next week, but because Labor Day is, a lot of people will be out, maybe it doesn't make sense to release it on Monday and do Tuesday instead. But I thought it would be a really good opportunity to, I like to do these things every now and then. I think the last time I did it was around Christmas or New Year's, where I said it's going to be 2020 is going to be a crazy year. And it's turned out to be crazier than even I think most of us could have expected. Certainly, I did not see a global pandemic being on the radar for possible risks in 2020. But there are so many crazy stories to cover, whether it's markets, whether it's the Fed and Fed policy, whether it's Europe, the Eurozone, China, North Korea, the RNC, the DNC, Kenosha, and America's just increasing racial divisions and class conflict, which I think is actually the biggest driver of the issues in the United States and has been for some time. It's getting worse, and that, of course, feeds back into markets and our broken capital markets and the role of regulators and policymakers and politicians in having really enabled that pillaging of American society and the American economy over decades. We have an economy that doesn't work, increasingly doesn't work, but people keep focusing on markets to the point where the policies themselves have just become, they're not just counterproductive, they're destructive. So there's just a lot to focus on. And I'm actually, despite the fact that I'm rather somber about what we're going to see in the next few months, especially with this election coming up, I do think it will be an amazing opportunity for this show. I have some really, really, really great guests and episodes already lined up. In fact, the one I'm most excited about is going to come out next week, so either Monday or Tuesday. And that is going to be with 3 guests. And the subject of their work and the subject of the episode is on the caliber of a Mike Green, Christopher Cole, in terms of its thematic framework. It's very much focused on looking at the underlying macro forces driving the market's epiphenomena. And I think that it talks about many of the themes that we've talked about with guys like Mike Green or Jim Grant or Chris Cole or Harry Krishnan or Eric Peters, but they do it in a different way. And I think simply the fact that they do it in a different way is itself valuable, because every time you look at the same thing from a different perspective, you understand it better. But I think also their expression of it is also valuable. And I think because Mike Green was really good at, I think, capturing something that I had never really understood. I had a very peripheral understanding of the impact of passive. Like I was not unaware of it, but the way Mike Green put it together, as I said on that episode, and I've said in other episodes, it was, I compare it most closely to Shoshana Zuboff and how she really helped me understand the logic of surveillance capitalism and differentiating between the logic and the actual technology. And Chris Cole, of course, was the first person that ever really taught me about volatility. I met Chris in 2012, and I had him on my old TV show back then. So he was, I can't say enough about how valuable Chris's work and his papers were to my intellectual development early on. These guys, the way they talk about markets and what they discuss is actually the closest to what I have already been thinking of or thinking about, or how I've thought about things, or how I've talked about things on this show. But they put it together in a way that I haven't. And they express it in a way that I think is really constructive. And so I'm very excited about it, and I think it's going to be really, really dynamite. It's going to be one of those dynamite episodes. And to my knowledge, they haven't done any other podcasts. I haven't seen them anywhere else. So hopefully we'll be the first ones to have them, and that'll be really exciting. And the week after that, I have a central bank expert, a really well-known guy. You guys or gals may not know him, but he's very highly regarded bank policy expert. And he's going to be on to talk about the Fed policy, and the banking system, which I think is also going to be very important because this comes, a few weeks after the Fed's announcement this week about their more aggressive stance on growth and inflation, and accommodative stance on inflation, and it's going to come after the FOMC meeting. So that's going to be a really great opportunity to talk about all of those things. And there's some other episodes too, one dealing with technology and social media. Another one is going to be dealing with oil and again, in Saudi Arabia and some of that stuff. And those are just some of the ones that I've booked, but there's some other ones that are in the works that are also very, very exciting. Guys, I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful for all of you. You're all really amazing listeners. We have so many brilliant, interesting, thoughtful, creative, successful, optimistic people who listen to this show, and I really love that. And open-minded. I can't thank you enough for listening. You've made this show what it is, because without all of you listening, the show wouldn't have the cachet that it has, which is why I'm able to book the people that I'm able to book. This week, we were featured in 2 articles, an article on CoinDesk and another article in Forbes. The Forbes one was a feature of the Framework Venture guys who the author heard on this episode, and he talked about hidden forces. He gave us a shout-out. He said, our astute audience, I think he said, or our astute listeners. And the CoinDesk one was something where they reached out to me and asked for a quote about, it had to do with memes, because it's something I've talked about on this show and on Twitter. So it's really gotten to a place where I don't have to work as hard anymore to book guests. A lot of times when I reach out to guests, when I reached out to Soner Chaptai's at the Washington Institute, I called the Washington Institute and I spoke with someone in their media relations department, and she was immediately like, oh, I'm a subscriber. I was like, well, that's great. That makes this a lot easier. and thank you also for supporting the show. And that has happened so many times now, and it just makes it more rewarding. It makes it easier, and I just feel really, really fortunate. And I want all of you guys to know, of course, I do want and need your support. But first of all, I got to say, we've become very successful with the amount of support we have already. We have more support on Patreon through the premium subscriptions to our overtime, to our transcripts, to our rundowns than we've ever had before. And we have 3 people who are signed up to our $500 a month tier as well, which is 90 minutes of my time every month to go through the podcast and the show. And I can't tell you how amazing that is, because I don't have to start this show by promoting 2 or 3 corporate sponsors. Some podcasts are able to do that really well in a way that works for them and for their listeners. But I think it's really difficult to do that with this podcast because of how wide-ranging the material is. When I've looked to doing it, I really looked at like the teaching company, the great courses, masterclass, something like that. And still, I really don't want to read from a script. I don't want to have to think about that. I want to be free to focus entirely on the content. And because we have so many great, intelligent, some well-off listeners, but mostly people that really value the material, they're able to pay and they're willing to pay. And that really, a fraction of these people are able and willing to pay, of you are willing and able to pay. And I'm incredibly grateful. And of course, the more of you that subscribe to our premium content, the better off the show will be, because the more we will be able to do, I can get to a place where I can hire someone to maybe help with the booking, maybe help with my scheduling and other things, which would be huge. But I want you to know how much I appreciate it and what a difference you have made to the show and to me with your support. And I want everyone to know there are many people out there that can't support the show. I'm sure there are many of you that cannot do it, that might want to be able to do it. And there are some of you who might be able to do it, but maybe you don't want to do it, you're not used to it. That's fine. That's totally, totally fine. There are other things that you can do to support the show, things that don't require money and hardly any amount of your time. And I know we've gotten so many new listeners since I did this last time, but one of the easiest ways to support the show is by writing a review on Apple Podcasts. Even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, unless you have an Android device and you can't do it, but if you have access to a Mac or to an iPhone, it just takes a second. You just write us a review and it makes all the difference. It helps with our rankings on Apple. It also helps with people who are new to the show that go to Apple, journalists, other people, guests. They look at Apple's reviews. It's the only platform I know of that does this. And of course, it's still, even though it's fallen off in importance in terms of where it used to be, it's still the most important podcast platform and the most listened to. So that's really important. And also another thing, everyone, I think I've mentioned this one other time, there is a mailing list. I do not send emails out. I will send them at some point. I just want it to be I want to use this opportunity to collect the names and zip codes and interests. That's the most important thing. So if you go on the Hidden Forces website, if you go to hiddenforces.io, you're going to get a pop-up for a mailing list. You enter your name, your email, and your zip code, and you'll get an email for a confirmation. And if you click on that email, it'll send you back to the site. But it'll also give you that opportunity once you go back to fill in more information about yourself. You can fill in whatever information you feel comfortable doing. I would ask that you do as much as possible. It helps me get a sense of who my audience is. But the most important thing you can do is to give me your interest areas. What are the things that you're interested in? Are you interested in crypto? Are you interested in markets? Are you interested in both? Are you interested in geopolitics, politics, culture, philosophy? We have covered so many subjects on this program that it really would help me to know what people are interested in, because I really have no idea. I don't have much contact with all of you. I've spoken to some of you on the phone when possible. For the most part, I just get your emails. And so this would be very, very, very helpful for those. So those two things, if you cannot, or if you're not able yet, or if you don't know if you want to support the show with a premium subscription on Patreon, you can still support the show by writing us a review on Apple Podcasts and by subscribing to our mailing list and telling me as much as possible about yourself, because I want to know as much as I can about all of you. So that's it. I don't want to say any more. I appreciate every single one of you. I hope you have a great last day of summer and a beginning of fall. It's going to be a crazy year, and I look forward to being with all of you during that time and bringing you some incredible analysis and incredible content and great thinkers and conversations that will enrich your lives and help you navigate what is sure to be a turbulent end of 2020. Thanks, everybody.